are listening to She Has No Limits, the podcast.
Once you're shown, you can't unsee. Time is short, you best believe in yourself. You're a formidable force, driving, diving, lessons in the deep end.
She Has No Limits is a movement and community for professional women to come together, be inspired and learn how to design the limitless careers that we deserve. So today we welcome Yemi Jackson, the CEO and founder of Engage Transform, which is a talent acquisition and development company with the mission of increasing the placements of women and BAME talent in senior positions in science, technology, engineering and maths, otherwise known as STEM. Prior to Engage Transform, Yemi enjoyed a 25-year career in finance and IT, where she experienced firsthand the critical need for a more engaged and diverse workplace, one that begins with sourcing the right candidates. Yemi is also the founder of Building Inclusive Boards, a talent incubator and accelerator for minorities seeking board positions. Yemi's passionate about continuously striving to be excellent in your chosen area. She's a qualified accountant, a member of the Association of Chartered Management Accountants, and she completed her MBA at Warwick Business School in 2018. Yemi is also a member of the Institute of Directors. Using every rejection as a stepping stone, Yemi has continuously demonstrated how to overcome gender and race inequality with focus and determination. Her objective now is to assist organisations in finding high-calibre, diverse talent, the key to innovation and growth in the fourth industrial revolution. Yemi, a huge welcome. Yemi, welcome. It's fantastic to have you here with us.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this chat, actually.
Where should we start? So shall we begin with you and your career? Tell us where it all began, and who did you aspire to be when you were looking out on your career, and who did you look up to?
So my career, I am one of those accountants that actually wanted to be one from a young age. It's quite funny, when I got into the thrust of my career, everybody else didn't. They just thought, I fell into it, or I had no other choice. But I actually, from about the age of 11, partly because I was raised in Africa, so I was born in Nigeria. I came in when I was 11, but by that age, really, they tease Africans and Asians, right? The options of it has to be something professional. So it's either doctors, lawyers, accountants and things like that. But in actual fact, I now realise one of the reasons I wanted to be an accountant also is because I think I fancied my sister's boyfriend, because he was an accountant. But he had his own firm, and it was it's a big gap between me and my sisters. And I really looked up to him. And why it didn't seem to me like a big deal then, but now it's actually quite a big deal, because he was he had his own firm accountant. He was a black person. He taught me to play tennis and everything. And I thought, I want to be like him, And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to be an accountant. I thought it was an exciting stuff, and everyone says it's boring. It's not boring. So that's how I ended up becoming an accountant. When I went through a bit of a tough time when I was a bit of a teenager, went a little bit off the rails. I didn't do great GCSEs, and I think it's important to share this story because it's only more recently that I'm sharing it. So I didn't go have that trajectory where excellent A's, and then I went off to fantastic university. And in actual fact, I had a very mixed background. So came here when I was 11, did my secondary school here. My first year went to a school which my family panicked and thought, oh my gosh, she's going to get go off the rails. Packed me off to boarding school. Just outside Four Oaks for a year, and that actually had a huge impact on me, a really positive impact. I don't know if I stayed there longer, how I would have turned out, but that year was actually really good year that I still remember, even though it's 1 year out of the 6 years of secondary school, right, or 5 years of secondary school. But it was the opportunity to even just sit under a tree and just read and just not have to pretend you're anything else, right? But unfortunately, money ran out, so back into the state school system. And when I came back into the state school system, I was still putting my hand up and had threats of getting my head kicked in, because people didn't like people that were too kind of clever in some of those, particularly those secondary schools I went to. So really, last 3 years at secondary school was really pretty bad, really. And, if you asked me then, what did I want to be? I didn't think I knew. But then I went to college, and I didn't do A-levels because I didn't think I was that academically strong. And I'm glad actually I did something called BTEC, which gave me a lots of good foundation in business and finance. And I actually think that's why later on my founding was so strong in being a business person, apart from it didn't just teach me accounting. So it wasn't narrow. And then I met this wonderful East African accountant who was one of our lecturers. And again, I think his stories was he was qualified in his country, he came to this country, was told he couldn't obviously be an accountant because there's different rules, and he decided to go into teaching. But he was brilliant. So again, he reminded me, gave me the love of why I wanted to be an accountant in the first place. And then after that, went off to uni and did an accounting and finance degree. And then just started, when I finished there wasn't no, I didn't have the options of going to the Big Four because obviously I didn't go to a Russell Group University, and just started applying for various jobs, AP jobs and things like that. Started off at Sainsbury's head office. And I'm not sure how many of your guys heard the Building Inclusive Boards session that we did. But one of my first bosses, even though she was a couple of levels above me, Sharon Gunn, who's now the exec director at ICAEW. And she said, "Oh, you're an AP doing a temp job. I heard you've actually got a 2-1 degree. Would you consider applying for a graduate trainee scheme?" And that's how my journey started. So I'm one of those accountants that was from within an organisation. I always say we're the grafters, right? We're not it wasn't a Big Four that I came in and audited people. It's very much about that supporting business. And that's how my career started. But I've always had really strong women. So I've been quite lucky that I didn't think about it. I think we're all very conscious now, about role models and about having sponsors and about the importance of mentoring. We didn't have that language then, that giving away my age. It was 20 years plus ago. We just kind of got on with it. And even though the finance department in Sainsbury's was probably about 200 plus, I was maybe there was only about 2 black people in finance. Again, I wasn't overly conscientious because I was quite a cheeky person and just grabbed every opportunity I got, ran with it. But I had really good bosses. I had really good people that did push me. I did all of my experiences at Sainsbury's for 4 years. It wasn't great, but most of it was. And that's where I qualified. So they sponsored me. They paid for everything. Again, I didn't realise what a privilege that was, because now I meet people that have to sponsor themselves through, because I say to them, "Why are you not qualified?" I'm so really harsh. I'm really horrible, right? Why is it taking you 16 years to qualify? Get on with it, And then you hear their stories, and they just, they having to find the money to pay and the time. So all of the things I took for granted, actually, and I look back and think, oh, wow, not many people of similar colour as me or women have the similar privileges that I had. And then that was it. So mainly retail. So I stayed in retail as an accountant, but much more on the sort of an analysing performance side of things. I avoided what called the boring bits and stuff. And I just went on Kingfisher, then, just most companies I stayed about 4 years and progressed, probably got promoted twice. Then I got bored and then I'll move on to the next role. And that's what I did for kind of probably a good 15 years. And then I got to the middle, as we all know, and got stuck, right? So my cheeky sort of challenging people no longer worked. Because what would happen is normally I'll be the one that's be sent into the meeting to challenge everybody, and then my boss would come and go, "Oh, well, they would sort of smooth it over, right?" So I would have had the difficult conversation, and they can smooth it over. So as you go up the ladder, you can't do the same sort of thing. But I didn't know that. I didn't know the politics. I didn't have a sponsor, an official sponsor. I didn't have a mentor. I was just stuck. I was stuck. And got quite frustrated, and I just kept going for the director role, and I'd be told you're not strategic enough, and I was just like, what is going on? Because I did quite well up to then. And then I got to a stage I thought, you know what, there may be a number of things going on that might be hindering me. Some of it might be my gender, some of it might be my race, but what I'm always thinking about is, right, how do I get to the next level, right? So I'm not going to get bitter and upset because I knew people that I reported into, I felt I could do their job. I'm going to go off and do an MBA. I'll be honest with you, when I first said it, I didn't know what I was letting myself into. I thought, you hear MBA, what's it all about? I know a lot of people think, oh, really? Some people are really structured, aren't they? They really they know what they're doing and why. But I just thought, I'm just going to go off and do it. My son was about 11-ish, actually. He was probably about 13. They were going through the 11 plus. And I'll be honest with you, they were just really bright. And I felt a bit embarrassed. I thought, I'm so rusty. I need to go back to school myself. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was just, I felt, some parts of it, I felt it felt a bit indulgent. It was just so nice to have the Friday off and just sit and learn. And some of the first core part of it, a lot of the stuff I knew already, but it was just so nice to be in a room to just have discussions about some of the stuff that we learned theoretically. But what was good about it is I was able to put it into practice, right? So there was some of the new stuff I was doing. I literally could go back to the team and let's try this, let's try stand-ups and let's try all these new things I was learning. So it was at the right time I did it. I think if I did it earlier, it would have been another kind of theoretical experience. But for me, it was just like, a lot of the stuff was, I knew what I was doing and I had good ideas, but I didn't know how to frame it. So people weren't listening, right? I wasn't framing it right. And that's what it helped me do. It really helped me to package stuff. And within a year, it paid itself off because my confidence grew. And it was because I was in a room with a bunch of people that were already directors. But when they spoke and when I spoke and when we debated stuff, I saw that there wasn't much difference in our thinking. So in actual fact, I was ready. So it gave me confidence to start applying for roles that, and then I got them. And it just, my kind of confidence went through the roof. But then I decided, obviously, it wasn't just good enough doing an MBA, changed jobs, and it just, took on quite a lot. So I think probably for about the last 3 years of my career was pretty stressful. So, that's my career today up to 2017, really.
Just to pick up, I had a question, Yemi, about in all of that lovely tale that you've just told us, right at the beginning when you were in the boarding school for a year and you said it was lovely because it meant you didn't have to pretend to be someone you're not.
Yeah.
I was just interested. So that was that year, and then you had to come back, and I've assumed then that you then had to then re-pretend to be someone that you're not. At what point did you become yourself again?
I think it just took a while. When did I? So if you think about, I came to this country when I was 11, which was, most people think, which was one huge adventure for me. And my first year, like I said, was in the state school, which was stuff I've tried to erase out of my mind, not because of the state school, but it was just really, really quite, for someone that's new and it was, all the African accent and all of that you get. I said, I don't know when I found myself again. I think probably when I found my faith when I was about 19, right? So most of I would say from 11 to 12, it was learning, coming to a new country, learning language, just everything's just as a kid, you're just like, everything's just, you're taking it all in, right? Went off to the boarding school for a year, which sometimes is the other experience for people. Sometimes they'll feel, and like I said, I think if I stayed there for long, I don't know what maybe it would have become a negative impact. Maybe I would have lost who I am and things like that because I was, again, the only black child there. But for me, it just felt like it was just like a surreal place for a year. I made some really, really good friends, which we've now lost contact. We kept for a little while. And then when I came back into the classroom, because I think even in Nigeria, you're encouraged to put your hand up if you know stuff, but to come back into where you're having to be cool, right? Where it's not cool to be clever, it was really difficult. Like I still did it for the first 6 months, like, and, so I don't think I really found myself again. So college was kind of good, had 1 or 2 positive impact. Uni was fairly, because I think I do just learn. I do enjoy learning. I think that's one thing I liked, which is quite sad. I enjoyed just researching stuff. Uni maybe, but halfway through uni, that's when I found my faith. And I think that's when I started to unpack a lot of the who am I, what am I. At this stage, actually, like I said, I did go for a bit of rose when I was young. I had a gold tooth, I had my hair shaved. I thought I was just really, really cool and things like that. And it was so funny when I finished uni and I actually obviously wanted to get a job. I thought, well, I'm not going to get a job with a gold tooth. But when I did take it out and cleaned myself up to look the part, people thought I'd sold out. And I said, but it just showed you they didn't get it, that it was just fashion. Yeah, so it's just interesting how people assume that just because you've got your hair shaved, or it was just all I saw. It was, for me, it was as an accessory that I could now take off, and people thought, oh no, she's trying to be who she isn't. She's trying to, and it's just, so I'm very much about, can you just let people be who they want to be, right? Everybody, regardless of the colour of their skin or the gender, everyone's just got such a, so my taste in music is really varied, right? So it goes from gospel to country to reggae to, I mean, when you hear some of the music we play, it's just so different because I've had so many different influences. And if you're not careful, either side could say, you can't mix classic with jazz or go to reggae, and then we go back to, so our kids are wonderful, they hear everything. And it just seems like sometimes we box people in, whichever side, whether that's, if you're black, this is a certain type of music you're supposed to listen to. If you're white, it's just, so it's been nice. I've had a really rich background of I lived with, for the year that was at uni, at boarding school as well. It was a weekly board. So some of the weekend I actually stayed with a matron and her family. So there's just lots of things that really influence. So even at uni, I was the one that mixed with everybody. So I had Asians and I had black, and I was in all the groups, right? So yeah, I think when I found my faith again, I think that's when I started to really unlearn who I was, what I'm about, what do I want to do. It's been long. It's taken a long journey. So I mean, even up to a point when, in order to get me into a Catholic school, because we just assume, because when you're foreign in the country, you just think, everybody just lives by what they hear. Nobody does the proper research. So we're like, yeah, Catholic school. They're good schools. That's, how do you get to Catholic school? You become a Catholic, right? So when they said, choose a name, I chose Barbara, and I decided at 12 that was it. I don't want to be called Yemi. I want to be called Barbara, because then it made me fit in. And I was Barbara till actually my first job. And Sharon and I were talking about this, and we both laughing our heads off. So when I started at Sainsbury's, my maiden name was Falola. So I started off as Barbara Falola, and then I met my husband. Well, and we were going to get married, and I thought, oh my God, he's Jackson. So I'm going to be Barbara Jackson, right? I can't be a Barbara Jackson. I mean, it just shows you, right? I cannot be a Barbara Jackson, because if you say Barbara Jackson, in my image, in my head, is a redhead, American woman. So I thought, no, I'm going to have to change my first name back. And I came into the office and they said, right, everyone, from now on, I'm no longer Barbara. Oh, can you just imagine? They're just like, who is this nutter? I want to be called Yemi Jackson. Yemi for Lola. And I remember her going, you can't do that. And I said, I can, this is my proper name. And I remember being so cheeky. My boss was just like, oh, Yemi, and he was trying to say it. And I said, come on, don't be, it really is Yemi. And that's how cheeky I was. I look now and I think, I was in such an environment. I was really, really fortunate, because some people couldn't just come in and just be who they were. So I didn't really start to experience any sort of racism, overt racism, probably until I should go further up the ladder, right? So when you're quite young and junior, but I think as later on that you start to, and I still didn't kind of recognize it. And I thought, oh, okay. And I know one of the things you wanted to cover is, I think my first experience, I remember after I qualified, my first job, one of my really good friends, we're still friends now, we call them partner in crime, they used to call us. And we both got on really well, really good, really, really good friend, a lovely, lovely, wonderful lady. And he looked at both of us and he ignored me, and he said to her, 5:30, you don't have to work this late. You do know that. But I thought, so what does he mean? He was quite loaded, right? So obviously we, as and I think you've seen me say a post about, we're taught as we have to work twice as hard and things like that. There was just so much what he was saying to her. You don't have to work as hard as they do, effectively, is what he was saying. We both obviously never talked about it. You just don't talk about stuff like that, really. But it was very, very pointed. And I think that particular organisation also, there was some of this stuff I've never shared publicly before, really. This lady that I had to sit next to before my partner in crime started, which was so nice because she was so lovely. It was just like a breath of fresh air. But I had to sit next to a PA of one of the directors. And it was when, I don't know if everybody remember when Barnes was, for the first time, he was a manager. He was a manager for football club or whatever, and he got the sack, right? I mean, I'm not a big football thing. And what was going around social media, well, not social media or whatever, was they had a picture of a black man being hung as referring to Barnes.
I remember.
Oh my gosh. And I was sat next to her and she showed me that. And I just said, I was in such a shock. And I just thought, I said, why are you showing me this? I mean, what? And she thought it was funny. She was just laughing. I thought, she was a pretty unpleasant person anyway. There was other things where, there was I now remember I'm a qualified accountant and things like that. I mean, she was always couldn't believe how the AP manager was not, I was not the one reporting to AP manager, even though this other lady had no communication. She was a lovely lady, but she was just really overtly racist. But again, it was, you wouldn't go to HR or things like that because you always think it's that individual, right? So you think, oh, it's just one very unpleasant person. And that's how most black people deal with it. You try to isolate it. And go, right, this is a really unpleasant person who I just need to avoid. So when I did get the chance to move away from sitting next to her, I was so relieved. She was such a ogre. She was horrible woman, right?
Let's just contextualise this timeline-wise. When was this, Yemi?
Probably around 2000. Yeah, around 2000. Yeah. Not like, okay.
So let's talk about what you do now, because you are this amazing activist. You're very vocal. I love every everything you pump out because your passion comes through. You're an activist for race and gender equality in the workplace. Experiences like that obviously fuel the fire. Looking back from where you are now, how do you see the world of work changing? You mentor a lot of younger women and women of colour. Would that kind of thing happen now?
I think, unfortunately, I mean, I can only share my last experience, which was only about 3 years ago, which again, I think is when I experienced the most overt racism again, because being quite an outspoken person at work, I kind of bulldoze my way, right? I'm the one you bring in to challenge. So sometimes I say I was the one that was I remember, I think after one meeting, one of the commercial director said, "Oh my God, my balls hurt," because I demanded you came out of the meeting, goes, "Oh, yeah, my balls hurt. You've made me agree to something I don't think I can do." So I was never one. I've never been a victim. I've always one that I've been, quite strong. So when I experienced it again, I thought, "Oh my God, this type of people still exist," right? And remember, this gentleman said something about how many race tribunal cases he won. He thought it was something that was worth boasting about, and I just sat there gobsmacked. So obviously after that role, I decided actually I want to create a platform, taking all of my 20 years experience to bring people diverse talent, give them opportunities they don't get. So the whole purpose of my company that I'm starting, Engage Transform, which is a talent acquisition business, is I say to people, look, even though it's the clients that pay for our services, but actually it's about 50-50. Because what we meet is we meet great women and we meet lovely BAME talent that don't even know about the opportunities. And the whole purpose is to connect them to great organizations. And we've got organizations that said every time we go out, we can't find it. And I'm just like, well, I've got a whole database of awesome women. So I just absolutely love it. So I've always believed in diversity of thought, and just think, why can't we connect people? There are great people in organizations that want great talent. And that's what we do. We just connect great talent to great people. And when you call me an activist, I can't take that badge because I don't see myself as one. Because I'll be honest, like I said, I didn't realize that even how privileged I was. So yes, I experienced 1 or 2 times, but when you hear some people's stories, you just think, I spoke to one lady when she said that she had applied for a director role and this horrible woman got her in the corridor and said, "How dare you?" She said, "How dare you apply for it? Don't you realize?" We all laughed because we thought, you obviously don't understand your level. And I was just like, people like this? She said, "This horrible woman apparently is resigned or retired now." So it still happens this day and age. So I think people are obviously, particularly since last year, everybody's much more conscious. They can no longer keep claiming unconscious bias, but a lot of stuff still happening. Yes, I do believe Black Lives Matter. Yes, I do believe there are particularly Black women at that intersection of both. When you hear some people's experience, you just think, how can people still think is this acceptable in this day and age? So yeah, so I don't see myself an activist. I just think I've always challenged. But it's just quite nice to bring it into this space. And I'll be honest, I don't think I really found my voice in last year. And I found my voice more last year because I just thought, this can't continue. What have I got to lose, right? So, I'm in a position where, obviously only the right type of clients will come. Whereas I think if I was still in a workplace, maybe I don't know if I could say as much as I do. So I'm very, very, I do feel that people would like to say more, but they can't. If you're working for an organization, you just get targeted, so people are very much still, so I do hope and see every opportunity that I can to speak for those that can't speak. I use it, I use to talk, give my opinion. And I must admit, I get tired of talking about stuff with those. I'm very pragmatic. It's like, okay, so what can we do about it? And also because of the way I think, I'm very much analytical, right? So what's the solution? So there's that kind of so what, right? So the George Floyd stuff happened last year. Now, 12 months on, what are we going to do about it? Yes, once we got over there, so what can we do? What can organizations do? The most recent, what can we do? So I'm very much about trying to get as many ears from a corporate leader's perspective, say, look, this is not something we can just say we can't change, right? We can change. We can change when we are really focused and when we've got the compassion and understand the why, the change. And if we don't change, the social unrest will just continue.
It's interesting because that's where I'm coming from when I label you as an activist, because your rhetoric has momentum. It has that looking for solutions, looking for action, for change. It's really interesting what you say. I've not really thought about this before, that you being self-employed, and Catherine and I can relate to this because we're co-self-employed, that gives us a position of privilege, power, or autonomy to say what we want to say and what we believe in, with no fear of recrimination, because we are the boss.
Yes.
Therefore, I'm wondering if organisations are looking to their suppliers and their partners and their consultants and their coaches to bring that external challenge.
Yes. They are, and we are, and you know, and that's why I say when I don't see myself as an activist, I see myself of finally having a platform to just actually be able to breathe and say, you know, and I've not always been conscientious because I think I was just so, I don't know, when you were in your corporate career, I think we were just so busy just getting on with it because it was enough to juggle the kids and the husband and the challenging job, right? To become an activist when you know, I'll be honest, I really wasn't, you know, and I used to feel a bit inadequate when when I had friends that were very much about Black Power and things like that. I used to think, okay, love, you know, I've just got to get big, you know, I'm sorry, I'm too pragmatic. I'm just all right. So I've just got to just, you know, when I've done everything I need to do, maybe I'll find time. One thing I was very uncomfortable with is people being treated differently, right? You know, once it gets to a stage where I think I can no longer stand by this strategy, I struggled. Where some people could just take it, I would find I have to probably get to a situation where I find an exit. And I think that's what I did in the past. That was my way of saying, it's just like time to move on, right? So it's nice to be in this position to be able to help. And then the reason I set up the non-for-profit company as well is because I thought, actually, we need to go to the very top and make changes. And again, you're back to the same thing. And it was because I did a couple of NED roles and they were just saying, every time we went out, we couldn't find them. And I'm just like, what do you mean you can't find them? I know awesome women that have got bags and bags of experience that nobody's giving them the opportunity.
So again, this building inclusive boards, Yemi?
Yeah.
Okay, just to be clear. Great.
So that's,
Yemi, I was going to ask you a question. You mentioned that you've got these fantastic clients that you're working with who are surprising you by saying, well, we just can't find these people. You know, what is all that about then? Because we know, the three of us know on this call, that there's fantastic talent out there. So what is the problem?
I think what tends to happen, people tend to just search in the same pools, right? They use recruiters that they've used before, and no disrespect to lots of really great recruiters out there, but some of them are just, again, go reach out to the people they've always reached out to. And I think there's still a apathy that people really don't think we're really serious about change. I think they think we're going to be worn out and everything will go back to normal. And I mean, I know one of the ladies I know, she said every single person, almost every other person in the leadership team is called Dave. We laugh, right? Because it is, you need a sense of humour to keep on, right? So when she knows that at least she's got to have a couple of Daves on her shortlist, it's just ridiculous. And that's the problem with that talent acquisition, because it's very metrics driven. So both sides are going, so they're saying, oh, we want more diverse talented recruiters. Recruiters thinking, how genuine are they? But I'm just a bit like, well, don't come to me if you don't want diverse talent. So we're just turning it on its head. And we only do that. We don't exclude anybody, but you will get. And if I start to see a pattern that every time I put forward excellent women, excellent BAME talent, there's always some reason why you are going to go for the one wonderful white male that I've got on there, then I'll start to push back, because one of my clients they said, oh, you didn't give us that. And I said, well, actually I did. And now you need to tell me why was it that it ended up being that individual that you chose. So that's the thing for us, we can, because that client it's no longer your client. So yeah, I don't know where they look. And I think I partly it's my network as well. So I've just got a network of really great people that I just think I'll never run out of talent, awesome women talent and awesome BAME talent. So I think it's the pool that people maybe looked. And there's so many organizations. So you have to remember, so for example, some of the organizations maybe the brand's not that strong. So when they say they can't find them, maybe they're not attracting the right people. So it's just, I call myself the Tinder of recruitment, right? Because it is, you've got these great organizations, but you've got sometimes some great talent, but they may not necessarily be looking. So they may be looking at just the big brands or the footsies only. And you're that kind of broker in the middle going, well, actually, my experience when I worked for various organizations, different sizes, these are the different breadth of experience you're going to get. So, and that's why we're more successful, because we don't just say, and I'm always challenging my clients. Sometimes it's a bit too much, but it's almost like, well, so you want somebody that's done exactly the same job in exactly the same organization? That's not going to bring diversity of thought. And why don't you just consider broadening that? You'd be nicely surprised. And it's worked. And it is working. It's not, we should be more successful than we are. Some people are still not ready to have the conversation. They still end up staying with their comfort or the affinity bias.
Can I ask you for your views on systemic change? Because we've got gender pay gap reporting, we've got ethnicity pay gap reporting. I can't even get the words out without this sort of sense of inertia. It's not working, is it, Yemi? What needs to happen? What do we need government to do?
So when I finished my work in 2017, I hadn't actually finished my MBA, so my dissertation was going to be something related to my old organisation. But because of my experience, I thought, no, I don't care if it's not popular right now. I want to talk about diversity in the workplace. And it's just when sort of the gender pay gap kicked off and everything. And my prediction then was like gender pay gap is going to change everything, right? Because of the idea of shaming. The idea of if you have to publish everything every year and say this is where our gap is, hopefully, I still think gender pay gap would be effective if people are then given a period of time to address it, right? So, for example, lots of large organizations used to take advantage of small companies in terms of their payment terms, right? When the government introduced that, because you can now, you can do now, Google any organization in terms of how quickly they pay. So a lot of them are now doing it less than 30 days because it's now public. So I personally think what's effective, one is but depending on the size of the organization, but any company that is publicly listed, I think the pressure has to come from shareholders, right? So investors, institutional investors to say, right, I just feel that the carrot doesn't work. So you're going to, the owners are going to have to say, right, as I believe Legal in General have said, they're only going to invest in companies that have at least one BAME at their leadership. That's where the pressure is going to come from. I do think if they were consistent with the gender pay gap year on year, because initial first year, you can make up all of the excuses. The second year, it starts to get embarrassing. So I personally think that's what works. It's more reporting publicly and then holding these organizations to account. But the people that need to hold them to account are the owners. They need to care enough to say, actually, you haven't really moved on your gender pay gap last 2 years. And it's regardless of your base, but what movement, what difference are you making? So I think that's what should happen. And they should never have suspended it this year. And the government needs to step in and making them explain why it's not happening. And in particularly any companies that gets contracts from government, they should be held accountable.
So let's be clear on the call to action here, Yemi. If there are women listening who want to explore becoming a board member, what advice do you give to them?
So what do we need to do? So I think there's, in terms of if you want to pursue a non-executive director role, start by doing some research on corporate governance and actually understand what the role is, because it's interesting how we aspire to do stuff, but sometimes, I'm not saying this is for everybody, but start with actually understanding what is a NED role. What does it require? Because it does take, it is time invested, right? The average time you would have to give up, in addition, for particularly those who are already working full time, it's probably about 12 days a year, which doesn't sound like much, but that's twice a month. Actually, what's required from a NED? What's corporate governance mean? Do I even understand what company accounts are? Those are the sort of basics that people need to get their head around, because I think sometimes it's over glamorized, right? But those are the basics as a minimum that I would encourage any woman to start to look at and understand. And then the second thing I would say is look at programs that gets you in the room, because actually after the placement, I think, oh, no, thank you, if that's what goes on in the room, right? So unless you've done it before, I do think programs like the Board Apprentice, Building Inclusive Boards are really, really good. And what it does, what I love about them, it's not just sort of, we don't do classroom training, you're in the room and you're getting exposure and you're getting breaking into those networks. It's a really clever way of getting into the networks that you would not have necessarily got into before. That's what I encourage people to do, and be open. So I personally don't think that women should only ever be doing non-executive director roles that don't pay. I've actually got a real issue with that, right? So it's doing a mixture and just decide which ones you want to do. So if you're going to do one for passion because you love it and you want to do it for free, make sure it's a charity that you feel passionate about, right? And also, why should we not have a portfolio career and have ones that were yours are paid for? You've got so much years of experience. So a couple of first people that I placed in a paid non-executive director role, ladies still didn't think she had the experience. I'm just like, you've got 20 years of IT transformation. You know, you've got more experience than everybody around the table, and she's just pinching herself still, and she absolutely loves it. That's what I'd advise. And it's actually not as daunting as we think. It's still very much the talent acquisition people that deal with it are still quite lazy. They still go to the same people. But we are starting to break through and say, look, here is a group of people that are doing it for the first time.
And Yemi, do you give any advice around that? I just imagining the difference, isn't it? That being a woman or colour, or it's just the difference because we know the stats around boards. Do you give any sort of coaching or support in terms of how you present yourself? I mean, to use a cliche, almost like that personal brand, because you walk into a room of difference, and that's almost the challenge that people can see past that and see the value of it.
I think what we tend to cleverly, I'm not a qualified coach, and I always try to stick with my strength, right? So very much what we've offered is that pragmatic aspect of it. So corporate governance, we train you on that, and most of these guys already have the experience in whatever field they're in, so they tend to be quite strong in that area. And then we just then say, look, you need to get yourself a really good coach, because I know the value of coaching. I didn't get it until I was, late 40s. I wish I had coaching earlier. So we always encourage people when we do have a quite thorough interview process. So it's not just anybody can join. So we will go through and say, look, these are the gaps that we see, and we would recommend you to get a really good coach to support you. But I think actually being in the room, they learn, because they're also they assign a mentor, right? In the room to actually support them through that process. But I would never ever underestimate the power of actually having a good coach. And I always say to people, look, when you in that room, and I didn't realize this, right? Most of the people that perform really well have got coaches, but nobody tells you, do they? Right? Nobody tells you. So you just assume that they're just like, they've just turned up and just all of a sudden fabulous, and they just, and just owning their space. Somebody's supported them. So whatever support you can get, do it. It doesn't mean nobody's trying to fix you, but it's just the fact that even the best of the best recognize they need support in the areas that they struggle with. So that's my approach. It's just being the best version of yourself. So whatever support you need, find it, get it.
Last question, because we're running out of time. This podcast series is about self-awareness. We've given it a funny title, Knowing Me. So Yemi Jackson, what do you now know about yourself that you didn't know a year, 2 years ago?
I think something I've always known and I'm still working on is letting people finish before I start to So I'm very conscious of that. And I remember and I think what's helping me thinking, why was that? I think because I'm the youngest. And I think at one point when I was younger, I realised that if I waited for people to give me the chance to talk, I'm never going to be able to talk. So I've gone the other extreme. So I'm very aware that, and my husband tells me all the time, that I just need to let people finish. Even if I've got the answer, just give them the opportunity to actually land and then say what I have to say, actually. So that's one thing I'm still working on. I just think, when am I going to master that? I'm still struggling to master that. And even more recently, so I'm finding, and then also one of the things that I'm working on is I have to recognize that I'm actually running a business now. So I'm not the one that comes in the room and tells everybody what to do. Actually, I'm the one providing the service. So it's a work. We're all work in progress, Amanda. I've still got quite a lot to do. I keep thinking one day I'm going to be really master it all, but I'm still working on quite a few things actually. And I'm actually going through the board apprentice program myself. So because it'd be interesting to see what I'm like around the board if I could keep quiet enough. I think it's just been more letting others finish and active listening and then adding. That's the area I'm still working on.
I'd love to ask you, I know that Amanda said it was the last question, but is there anything that's a priority goal or initiative for you right now that you'd like to use this podcast to promote or ask for help?
Yes, please. I would really, if you're in any room and you've got people saying they can't find the right talent, women or BAME talent for specific positions, no matter how awkward that position is. I mean, our sweet spot is IT and finance, but honestly, we have found roles that I didn't think we could find people for, and we found the right diverse talent. So if you're in that room and organisations are struggling, please refer them to us because we can definitely help them. And if there are any women out there that want to explore non-executive director role, I would love to talk to them about it. And I can help them in two ways. If they've already ready and they don't think they need any kind of program, I can, look for non-executive director roles for them. But if they actually want to go through the 12 months program that we've got, which is really a really nominal fee, really, please contact me. I love it. So, and we're getting organisations that are coming through that are looking for those apprentices that they want to invest time in to help them with their NED role career as well.
Yemi, Barbara. Can I call you Babs? I'm going to call you Babs from now on. I can't help myself.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, it's been so nice having you here today. You are an inspiration and you make me grin from ear to ear. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Yemi. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Reflections, Catherine.
Absolutely, Amanda. So, oh gosh, there's so much to pull out here, but certainly something that resonated for me was this, pretending to be someone that you're not, and how much effort and energy it takes to be somebody that you are, and how you have to unpack it to understand and how it comes as we go through our life's experiences. So that was definitely a highlight for me in terms of Yemi's conversation with us.
Yeah, and I love her adaptability. The tactics she applied coming to this country aged 11 and jumping from school to school and calling herself Barbara, and this cheeky demeanour, very resilient, very courageous and open to anything.
And so humble in terms of who she is, she doesn't associate herself with that word activist. She's just speaking her truth and living her values. So it's just so refreshing to hear somebody say, well, this is what we do, isn't it? So
yeah, and I think she's not the only one. There'll be people listening who feel uncomfortable with that label of activist. I think it is loaded, but the truth is that she speaks the truth, and she continues to speak the truth, and she's undeterred, and I don't think enough people do that.
So yeah, a fantastic lady, I just loved her values-based way of doing business, her lack of fear to challenge people who aren't speaking her truth, the truth, and committing to what they say they're committing to. So yeah, remarkable. An incredible lady, a real privilege yet again to sit and talk to her.
That's it for this episode. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. Please send us your feedback. And if you'd like to have a sneaky peek as to who's coming up, then go to shehasnolimits.com and check out our podcast page.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all again soon. Take care. All the best.